There's more to tailoring than just being able to fly around on a magic carpet, although arguably that's actually the coolest thing. Right from the start of Wrath of the Lich King and all the way through, you can make very useful patterns, obviously mainly for cloth wearers. You get a very unique cloak enchant, which is actually a proc, so it will be particularly useful for snapshotting classes. You get a Frostweave net, which is, well, it's a Frostweave net. And you can make the flying carpet and the really, really fast flying carpet, which do actually both look amazing. And if you're achievement hunting and wanting to get every mount that you physically can in the game, then leveling tailoring just to make both of these is probably a must. What's also worth noting when it comes to tailoring is the actual spell power or the attack power cloak enchant works out higher than the average gain that you'll get from other professions, but it's just not static, which means it could proc at good times, at bad times. It is a little bit of a roll of the dice. It is, however, particularly strong for the likes of demonology warlocks, which we will talk about later on in the video, but mainly because this extra spell power when it procs your demonic pact is going to actually give your entire raid more spell power. Just want to say a quick thank you to all you guys that have joined the channel as a member in the scrolling banner below. More on how you can support the channel at the end of the video. What is the point of going tailoring? From a melee perspective, it's really good getting the bonus attack power, which can line up with your trinket procs. If you snapshot in bleeds or anything like that, it's useful. The spell power one I would say is particularly useful for the likes of Shadow Priests, you know, who are trying to get a really strong Shadow Word Pain up, or Affliction Warlock with a really, really strong Corruption. So the gain is probably quite hard to measure, because it will depend on everything that you've got proccing at the same time. But I really like tailoring. Like for certain classes, I wouldn't say tailoring's for every class by no stretch of the imagination, even though the benefit you're going to get is similar. But I just still think that the customization of things like blacksmithing, jewel crafting, or even engineering, you know, the benefits you get from engineering are really, really strong. And it's mainly because it's more controllable. You know, if you think about engineering, you get something similar. You know, you get a haste proc on your gloves instead of putting a normal enchant on them, but you control it. You know, on a minute cooldown, you're using it when you want to make sure it lines up with everything. Whereas because this is just a proc, you've not got that much control over it. Let's jump in and see what else they can do. So much like every crafting profession, at the beginning of the tier, so once Wrath of the Lich King actually launches, you know, a lot of people are going to be wanting to get their hands on the BOE epics, just because they want to go in to Nax with the best possible gear that they can get. So as a tailor, using Ebon Weave, which we're going to get onto the 3 types of cloth in a minute, you know, you can make Moon Shroud, which is for your healers, because it's got Spirit on. You can make Spell Weave, which is spell power and haste. It's also Int and Spirit, which is interesting, so particularly good for the likes of Warlocks or even Shadow Priests early on. And then you can make a pair of gloves for each sort of cloth playstyle, or stat priority cloth, we'll call it. You can also make some frost resistance gear for, well, it's mainly going to be for Saffron, but quite honestly, I can't see the need for any resistance gear in tier 7 at all. So really quickly, just looking at the flying carpet, you get, you know, the level 60 version, which is just your slow flying mount, and then you get your epic flying mount, which you can make at 70. The materials for it are actually really cheap. There's nothing here worth worrying about, but they are bind on pickup, so you do have to be tailoring to physically use it to then put it in your mount tab here. Once it's in your mount tab, if you drop tailoring, you're not going to be able to mount it anymore because it requires 425 skill in tailoring to actually ride. That will be more about just getting 1 additional mount towards your achievement. 2. We'll say 2. Because you make the normal version as well. So 2 mounts towards your achievement. Your tailoring specialization still makes a difference, but they've now been renamed. So you've got Spell Weave, Moon Shroud, and Ebon Weave. And you have to go to specific dragon shrines to actually craft these on a 20-hour cooldown. What you need to bear in mind here is at the same time as Titan Steel cooldown being removed, these were also removed. Now, I can't see us getting a state where these are just spammable, you know, out of the gate. They're going to have the 20-hour cooldown and require you to go to the right dragon shrine, because otherwise these are just going to get flooded out ridiculously quick. Epics all over the auction house. So, you know, I'm sure Blizzard will obviously make sure that it's got a cooldown on because it makes sense. But depending on your specialization, like if you're Primal Mooncloth, you know, if you're a Mooncloth Tailor, if you make the Moon Shroud, of course, you're going to get 2. Whereas if you make the Spell Weave and the Ebon Weave, you're only going to get 1. If you're Spellcloth Tailor, then, you know, you'll make 2 Spell Weave and only 1 of the others. And you can do these every 20 hours. You do also get a small buff, and the buff was removed. To get your specializations is still the same, so you'll end up doing the quest which takes you to Neverstorm for Spellfire. You'll have the quest that takes you to the Ultra Shadows in Shadow Moon for Shadow Weave, and the Primal Mooncloth one will take you over to Cenarian Refuge in Zangarmarsh. There's a few bags that require reputations, which you'll work on anyway, so if you get Revered with Ebon Blade, you can get the Abyssal bag, which is a 32-slot soul bag. You can get the Glacial bag, which is a 22-slot bag. This is getting exalted with Sons of Hodir. If you get Revered with Worm Rested Cord, you can make the Mysterious bag, which is a 32 slot enchanting bag. This is all fairly standard, the sort of things you'd expect from tailoring. And as we get each tier of content, obviously you're going to get additional recipes that are really, really good. I would compare tailoring when it comes to making gold a little bit as the same of blacksmithing. So really strong to begin with, because everyone who can wear cloth is going to want to get their chest and gloves just so they've got the best gear that they can get before they go into knacks with their guild, even though it's really not necessary. But people will do it anyway, and then when Alduar comes out, the crafted gear is going to go up in price. When Top comes out, that crafting gear will go up in price. But then in between tiers, obviously that gear will slowly go down in price because people will be getting hard mode gear or heroic gear or whatever else. But when it comes to the actual embroideries that you put on your cape, so you've got one that has a chance to restore 400 mana when you cast a spell. This requires one Eben weave and an Eternium thread. Then you've got the light weave embroidery, which has got a chance of giving you 295 spell power for 15 seconds and requires one Moon Shroud and one Eternium thread. Then you've got sword guard embroidery, which is for the melee and the hunters, which has a chance of granting 400 attack power for 15 seconds. And then one other big bonus is your leg enchant, as you can imagine, is always free. So you can make your Master Spell Thread, which gives 50 spell power and 30 stamina, and then you can make your Sanctified Spell Thread, which is 50 spell power and 20 spirit. Now these only cost an Eternium thread, which you buy from a vendor. And as you can imagine, you can still make the leg enchants for other people, so you can use this to make gold from the auction house. Once you're exalted with the Argent Crusade, you'll be able to make the spell power spirit leg enchant, and when you're exalted with a Kirantor, you'll be able to make the spell power stamina enchant. There are blue versions, but let's be fair, we only want the epic ones. Wrath of the Lich King is also where it introduced cloth scavenging, specifically for tailors, which would mean you get extra cloth when looting mobs as a tailor, and you have the cloth scavenging passive, but this can actually be a huge gain in things like gold per hour, being able to loot so much more extra cloth. If this was paired with enchanting, of course, you can make items quicker to then DE to sell crafting materials. Overall, it's absolutely amazing. So really, tailoring's decent. It's a decent bonus that you're going to get from the cape. If you're wanting to go tailoring to get the mounts, then obviously do it. I don't consider it the most powerful for anyone that doesn't take advantage of snapshotting, because I think snapshotting that 295 spell power on your main damaging ability as an Affliction Warlock, for example, or as a Shadow Priest, the overall gain is going to be so much higher, because you're getting 15 seconds of 295 spell power on all your spells, but almost an infinite amount of time on your primary spell that you're going to keep refreshed. So I can see that being very strong. For melee, only having the 45-second internal cooldown on it is very nice, and it's 400 attack power. You know, that's not too bad at all, but I still would prefer engineering and then either blacksmithing or jewel crafting, or even early on inscription. If you haven't seen any of those videos, go check them out. I've nearly covered all the professions now. They're all in a nice playlist on the main page, so feel free to go check it out. Thank you to all you guys in the banner below. Please do make sure you like and subscribe for lots more Wrath of the Lich King content, TBC content, Classic Era, absolutely everything to do with anything that's not retail. Roll the outro. There's lots of ways you can support the channel to keep me here putting out World of Warcraft content and covering all future MMOs. Consider joining the channel as a member. You get access to emotes. Everyone will know you're a member when you comment on future videos because you get a nice icon next to your name. And you get access to members-only videos, which I'll be putting a lot of on the channel throughout the year. Additionally, there's a Patreon link in the description as well. Thank you for watching all the way to the end, and I'll see you on the next one.